Yo guys, Punkrat, another video. So blackwing lair is right around the corner, and some of you guys are going to be absolutely shocked with how good the items are in this raid, at least in comparison to what you might be used to with pre-BIS stuff and molten core. There's about to be a significant power spike for a lot of classes, especially warlocks and things like that, although they're not going to reach their absolute power spike just yet. Classes are going to reach another threshold, and parses are definitely going to represent that. This is because of the loot that's available out of this dungeon. So for this video, I had to put focus on the trinkets. Some of the trinkets in blackwing lair are absolutely bonkers, but phase 3 is not just blackwing lair. We also have the Darkmoon Faire. So not only do we have blackwing lair trinkets, but we have Darkmoon Faire trinkets to pool in. This is the most overpowered trinkets of phase 3. Wait till you guys see what's on this list. Let's get into it. So before we step foot into blackwing lair at all, let's cover the Darkmoon Faire trinkets that you're able to get from completing the Darkmoon card decks. First of which being the blue dragon. This is one of the best trinkets on the entire list, comparable to the level of strength, at least specifically for a couple of classes, to some of the more infamous ones from BWL. You get this from completing the beast deck. So you have to get the ace through 8 of the beast deck. Most of those cards are pretty simple, but the ace is what's difficult to obtain. The ace of beast, you get it off the beast from UBRS. So expect a lot more people to be farming Upper Blackrock Spire come phase 3. But this trinket is stupid, and I really mean that. If you read it, it says has a 2% chance on successful spell cast to allow 100% of your mana regeneration to continue while casting for 15 seconds. While spamming your spells, 2% is not a terrible proc rate. It comes up pretty damn often. And where most effects like this, you'll see them at like 15% or something like that, even though they're baseline, 100% mana regen is crazy. And this scales with your gear. So once you're in full tier 3 and you have a ton of mana regen, a ton of spirit, ton of MP5, that 100% becomes more and more effective. This is the best priest trinket in the entire game. I believe druids like it as well, but it's really the flagship trinket for a priest. And what's really crazy about this is that this is probably one of the best trinkets that you can use in the Burning Crusade as well. It's so damn good specifically for priests that you'll see priests in blackwing lair still use this thing. They'll rock this and then they'll have a healing power trinket in the next slot. So all you priests and druids out there, get ready to start farming UARS big time, or farming gold and buying the ace off the auction house. Alright, so the next trinket from the Darkmoon Faire is one of my favorites. It's called the Darkmoon card Maelstrom, which you get from the Elementals deck. The ace of Elementals has a chance of dropping off Hydrospawn and Lord Incendius. I absolutely love this one though. If we read it, you'll see it says chance to strike your melee target with lightning for 200 to 300 nature damage. It's basically like a single target Thunder Fury proc without the extra stuff like reduced attack speed or nature damage increase. But this trinket is actually best in slot for Ret Paladins and Feral Druids in PvE. It's all about attack speed for them and proccing on hit effects. So having the Darkmoon Maelstrom, which is probably one of the strongest pure damage effects, is really powerful. And then on top of that, you can also use it on a rogue in PvP. Said this a million times, but as a rogue, you can run this elemental damage spec basically where you rock this trinket, and with your poisons, this, maybe like weapons that have on hit effects that do nature damage, while you're stun locking your enemy, you can constantly proc spell damage and it'll bypass armor and help you just sort of micro damage them down. That's why this is one of my favorite trinkets, because I love doing that on my rogue, and I'll probably try to get it. Although that'll probably be my focus once misplaced servo arm is a thing. So the last Darkmoon Faire card that I want to cover isn't really that great, but it's kind of cheesy, so we'll just quickly cover it. It's called Darkmoon card Twisting Nether, which you get from the Portals deck. The ace drops off Darkmaster Gandling, and why this is such a cheesy trinket is that it gives the wearer a 10% chance of being able to resurrect with 20% health and mana after dying. So warlocks with soulstone, shamans with Ankh, it's basically exactly that. It's kind of just cheesy. Like you might just see it happen one day in a raid, you might see it happen in world PvP where you kill the enemy and then he just pops up out of nowhere and finishes you off if you guys are both low. And actually back in the day in the Burning Crusade, you were able to use this in arenas. I have vivid memories of killing somebody in an arena in a 2v2 or 3v3 and them just popping out of nowhere and rezzing back up after we killed them. I think that got patched, I'm not 100% sure, but I definitely know that that was a thing in early TBC. Alright, so those are the deck trinkets. Now let's get into the real stuff, the BWL trinkets. First on the list, we've got Stylene's Impeding Scarab. This is the tank trinket in World of Warcraft. Now, of course, there's mitigation trinkets in TPS. This is clearly a mitigation trinket, but this is the defensive trinket of vanilla. It doesn't have an effect, it's just flat mitigation stats. The first one is increases your chance to block an attack with a shield by 5%. The second one is increase your block value of your shield by 24, and increased block value actually makes your shield slam do more damage. So if you're running a full prospect, this does increase your TPS. And the third is increases defense by 13. Now, of course, if you're a dual wielding tank, this is just not something you care about, but for specific bosses where you need to be defensive, like you're not going to dual wield tank Patchwork or somebody like that, and this is definitely the best trinket in the game. You might be noticing a trend here, and that trend is definitely going to continue. The reason why I know this is such an incredible trinket is that people use this at level 70 in the Burning Crusade. Once again, if we head towards TBC, you'll notice that tanks are going to be using this trinket throughout all of Karazhan, tier 4 content, and probably even into tier 5 depending on what they get. Alright, next up, we've got Fang Talisman. This, along with the next trinket that I'm going to cover, are known as the Guild Breakers, at least for me. Everybody wants this, and if you guys are running social raids or stuff like that where there's a soft reserve system, expect to see pretty much everyone on the list have this as their soft reserve. This is probably the best item in Blackwing Lair, period, along with, like I said, the next one that I'm going to cover. They're basically the same thing. Fang Talisman has plus 56 attack power baseline and a 2% chance to hit. It's just a ridiculously large amount of stats. It's almost like 2 really good rings in one. And on top of that, it increases your chance to dodge an attack by 1%. The crazy thing about this is that this isn't just a melee DPS trinket. In fact, it's also the best trinket that you can have on a tank. The most important thing to tanking in vanilla is your threat per second, and every tank is looking to get at least the baseline threshold for hit cap. So your main tank is going to want this, your melee DPS is going to want this, and once again, this trinket is viable even into the Burning Crusade. It's the best in slot melee DPS trinket and tanking trinket throughout the entire game, and with good reason. Now the next one that we're going to cover, and I kept alluding to it just a couple seconds ago, is basically the exact same thing just for casters. It's called Neltharion's Tear, and again, it's just a ton of stats. It's like 2 rings in one. It gives you 44 spell power and 2% chance to spell hit. If you divide that in 2, that's like 22 spell power and 1% hit, 2 of those rings into one. It's just raw damage, and once again, the best trinket in the entire game. From Blackwing Lair all the way through naxx, this is what you want, and the beauty of it is that it just takes care of your hit cap. On a mage and on a warlock, when it comes to the armor pieces that you're wearing, you kind of want to avoid having hit on every single piece. This takes 2% away, that way you can start substituting in items that have just raw spell power or crit in order to push your character a little bit further. But these 2 trinkets, I'm telling you, are going to cause a ton of drama in your guild. Everybody who's at the top of the DPS meter or feels as though they've been a main raider forever is going to feel entitled to this trinket, and if they're getting passed over by the next guy, or maybe they got passed over once or twice, people are going to Jiku it. Like this, I'm telling you, this is going to happen in most guilds. There's going to be drama around these trinkets. Now here's the healer alternative. We've got the Rejuvenating Gem. Now when it comes to healers, I feel as though there's always less drama when it comes to the Reju Gem, just because healers aren't as focused, I feel like, on parsing as DPS players are. Maybe healers, people who tend to play healers, I think, have a little bit of a personality difference between mages and rogues and fury warriors. Maybe I'm wrong, but you guys probably understand what I'm saying. The Rejuvenating Gem is probably equally as good for a healer, but it doesn't cause the same amount of drama in my experience, but it's incredibly good, and once again, one of the best trinkets that you can run even in the Burning Crusade. So one thing that switched from vanilla to TBC is flat hit percentage change into hit and crit rating. So where in vanilla you'll get 1% chance to hit, 1% chance to dodge, 1% chance to crit, in TBC you get rating, which is just an arbitrary number that gives you a certain percentage based on your level. So all of these items get switched over to level 60 rating, where it'll give maybe like 24 hit, and that could give you like 1 or 2% crit. I don't know, this is just arbitrary numbers off the top of my head. And once you hit level 70, that 24 crit will actually be less. With the Rejuvenating Gem, it's just flat healing power and MP5. So this trinket maintains its strength going into the Burning Crusade. And there, for a couple raid tiers, you'll probably be using it if you have it. I mean, just look at it, guys. It's crazy. I really don't feel like I have to say too much. It's just a raw amount of insane stats, plus 66 healing power and plus 9 MP5. It's basically like having a one-handed weapon of your dreams, at least in today's stat pool. Come AQ40 plus, you're gonna have weapons with over 100 healing power, but right now, if you had a 66 healing power weapon with 9 MP5, you'd definitely be super happy. Just a raw amount of healing power and mana regen. Alright, so those are the generic trinkets that pretty much everyone can use in Blackwing Lair. But alongside that, we also have trinkets that are class specific. So it drops in, only druids can use it, mages can use it, rogues can use it. And these are a little bit easier to get just because, you know, you might have a smaller pool to compete against, but some of them are really freaking good. The first one, and I've said this probably a million times, but this is to really compile everything together for the release of BWL, is the Quickening Gem. One of the best mage trinkets in the game, period. And once again, even going into the Burning Crusade, people are going to be using this as a PvP trinket just to get quick polymorphs off. The haste is going to go from 33% flat to haste rating, so you're actually probably going to, I guess, maybe net out like 15% haste at level 70, something like that, but even that's super significant. So if you get this, make sure that you keep it all the way through TBC, and you might want to use it in PvP, at least in the early seasons. But the thing about this trinket is that it's the top of the line mage trinket in PvE for a couple phases, and in PvP for pretty much the entire game. 33 increased spell haste. That's pretty much unheard of. It's like Icy Veins. You pop it and just get a super fast polymorph on the healer, and then you still have the haste to just blast damage into whatever the other target is. And in PvE, it's the exact same thing. You'll pop it, then pop Arcane Power or maybe Combustion, depending on what spec you are, and it'll allow you to get more Frostbolts or more Fireballs out while your cooldowns are popped. If you're a mage and you want to top parses in BWL, what you're going to be doing is popping Arcane Power, Mind Quickening Gem, blasting out as many Frostbolts as possible, and then have a Discipline Priest in your raid give you Power Infusion after that fact, and if you have great gear, you're bound to be a top parser. This trinket is one of my favorites. I've actually had it on my mage multiple times on different private servers, and once you have it, you never want to go back. Okay, so this next one I covered on a video, I think maybe about a month ago, maybe a little bit less than a month ago, and this is one of the craziest trinkets. It's more focused towards PvP, but the raw power is just immense. So recently I made a video called Shamans Are Busted, and I was talking about elemental shamans and their raw power. In that video, there was some little clips from PvP montages that showed shamans popping this specific trinket, the natural alignment crystal, and then just maybe having Berserker from the Berserker hut in Warsong Gulch or AB, and pretty much just one-shotting people with chain lightning. So if you see, it's an on use that aligns the shaman with nature, increasing spell damage by 20%, improving healing effects by 20% as well, who cares about that, and increasing the cost of the mana spell by 20%. It's basically Arcane Power in a trinket, a bit less percentage spell damage, but still 20 is pretty crazy. And the crazy thing is that you can combine this with either Nature Swiftness combos or Elemental Mastery combos, so 100% crit or a second instant cast ability. You can use it on a Resto LA Sham who's kind of just cheesing people every now and then with Nature Swiftness combos, or as an Elemental Shaman who will probably be the scariest thing to encounter in AB once that's released. So the Natural Alignment Crystal is just bonkers. Alright, this next one is again pretty focused on PvP, but situationally really good in PvE as well. It's the warrior specific trinket and it's called the Life-Giving Gem. So if we read it really quick, it says heals yourself for 15% of your max health and increases your maximum health by 15%. It's basically the original Rallying Cry, except it only applies to yourself. Actually, I think even Commanding Shout in a couple expansions worked exactly like that. It's basically like Last Stand, except the difference between Last Stand and this trinket is once Last Stand runs out, you lose the increased health, where this actually heals you for the baseline 15%. I believe that's a distinction, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it does interact slightly differently than Last Stand, but it heals you and increases your maximum health for a little bit less than Last Stand does. But all it is basically another defensive pop. In PvE, you're going to want to use this trinket on fights like Maexxna in Naxx, where below 30%, she's going to be doing web wraps on your healers and she's going to be soft enraged. You have to survive the entire web wrap duration while your healers are all stunned without dying, and you might have to go through 2 or 3 of them depending on what the DPS is like in your raid. So the first one you might shield wall, the second one you'll have a stone shield elixir popped, you'll have full hots on yourself, maybe a Last Stand, and the third one, if there is a third one, you might have to rely on your Life-Giving Gem, or you might want to combo Last Stand and Life-Giving Gem if there's only 2, something like that. It's just a super useful trinket when you really need an extra defensive pop during a mechanic that you absolutely cannot die on. But that's not where this is used. The Life-Giving Gem is the most popular warrior PvP trinket. Warriors do a ton of damage. When they close on you, they clobber you, but they're also very susceptible to taking damage, especially from range. This Life-Giving Gem just gives them an extra utility spell that they can use to swing the fight in their favor. This, with hopefully healers backing them up, just makes them annoying to kill, especially if they have a full PvP set with like 6,000 HP plus with a couple little buffs. So trust me, you guys are going to be seeing a ton of warriors with like Ash Candy, Hand of Rag, and a Life-Giving Gem going forward. You might think you have them, and then they just pop it and turn the fight on you. So there you have it, probably the most broken trinkets on the list. Maybe a couple honorable mentions just here at the end in the outro. We've got the Rune of Metamorphosis for druids, which allows them to shapeshift for 20 seconds without using any mana at all, pretty good in PvP, and the Scrolls of Blinding Light, which is basically like the healer equivalent to the mage speed trinket, where it just allows them to have a 33% spell haste and just pump out flash heals, or increases attack speed if they're a red paladin. Although those are actually two pretty decent trinkets, I just didn't think they really packed a punch for this video, so I just mentioned them here really quick. But the trinkets in phase 3 are pretty busted, and I'm sure you guys can see why. And a trend that you probably noticed is that a lot of them are viable even into the Burning Crusade. So once guilds start heading into Karazhan, you're going to be seeing a ton of guilds just basically in their mainly full tier 3 sets, with all little trinkets and stuff also still from vanilla. And this is because some of the higher end stuff at vanilla is much better than a lot of the blue gear that you can get. So some of these items are so powerful that even with a 10 level threshold increase, they're still the best options for a while. Now hopefully I got you guys salivating a little bit for what's to come in terms of loot. I mean, we've got some crazy stuff coming forward, and good luck to all of you guys in getting the items of your desire. So of course, with that said, if you guys enjoyed the video and you want to see more like it, make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, you know the drill, soldiers. Hit the notification bell to be notified every single time I post a new video straight out of the render oven. And with that said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.